40 minutes in front of these drivers and plenty of opportunities.
But yes, a bit of point of contention, but it doesn't matter now, Ron. We're going green.
Drivers are on their way, and it's a rather convincing start from Joyner. He's going to be leading them complicated. Heading through this bend, it tightens up though before they head off into turn number 8. This is going to be very close.
What is that?
Based off the fact you sound like you sat on a cold toilet seat there, Adam, but that was insane. And Kramer was mega sideways coming out of turn number 8.
That one got me. That one got me.
Look at this conga line. Dun 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 dun. Who was it that came up from the? Oh, that was Tolo coming in. Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. This is round number 8 of the season, coming to you today from Okayama. My name is Ron Maunz. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Randall McGrew, and in the virtual production hall we have Guido Marzucchi. For the first time this season, we are finally out of the UK. We're swapping out canned beans for sushi today as we rock up to an iRacing staple that is Okayama. Everyone has driven around here. Everyone has their own memories of this place too. So Randall, I would usually call a race like this a walk in the park, but we've got some rain to talk about as well. So that walk in the park, probably going to have to dodge some falling anvils along the way.
Absolutely. Bring your waders. It's a little bit wet out there. The rain just stopped right before we went live. So right now we're not seeing any rain falling onto the track to keep it wet, so I doubt we'll see a dry line form here in the remaining time in qualifying, but in the race we could be seeing some mixed conditions.
And mixed conditions certainly going to be the name of the game for these drivers, having to deal with a drying track that is just very rarely going to be fully dry. I have a feeling that we're still going to be slightly damp come time for the end of this race, just based in terms of the track conditions as well. Temperature's not looking too hot at the present moment, so even though the rain has stopped, I have a feeling we're still going to be dealing with a slight amount of wet weather come time for the end of this 40-minute long. Oh boy, oh wow, that was a tragic voice crack. This 40-minute long race that we have coming up, and as I go through puberty again, we'll drop off the weather discussion and take a look at the championship point situations, because we are quite a decent way into this season. We've had a lot of drivers prove themselves to be the best that they can all throughout this season. Some drivers trying to form some dynasties and grab their first championships, others trying to grab their 18 billionth championship. So we'll get those points loaded up here in a couple of moments time, as we're still in the midst of this qualifying session with about 5 minutes left on the clock as it stands right now, with Jorg Mani, the Masters man, currently on the provisional pole in the 925 car. So we're going to start off with Spec 1, where it has been a story of dominance, really, for Ian Joyner. He's already taken a boatload of checkered flags thus far this season, 5 to be a bit more precise. So he has been a tour de force thus far this season. And as we get those points loaded up here in a couple of moments time, we'll get a chance to see the dominance that Joyner has seen thus far right now. So we're with a slight technical issue here. I will note that outside of Ian Joyner, Christian Gabanka and Adam Tompkins have been the other drivers to grab wins thus far in the 7 races that we have had in this Season 1 2025 Formula Ford calendar. But Ian Joyner proving himself to be very fast. The past 2 seasons have been dominated by James Berry, another Brit. However, James not really showing up as of late, and another series that he runs quite regularly on iRacing hasn't been showing up for that either. So I hope James Berry is doing all right at this point in time, but he hasn't come to defend his crown. Instead, it's gone very, very well for Ian Joyner as it stands at the moment, off the back of 3 straight wins as well at Thruxton, Donington Park, and Cadwell Park. So seeming to be a fan of the tracks with Park in their name. So Okayama maybe not going to fit that same rubric, but he's still been pretty fast thus far this season. 662 points on the board. You have to go a long way back to find Jason Green in P2 at 526. However, from Green back to Michael McConnell in 3rd, you don't have to go far back at all. So that's looking pretty tight for P2 in the Spec 1 category. And then right behind you got Soren Garrett and Kevin Adrian running at your top 5 pretty close all around in the Spec 1 category. Outside of Ian Joyner, just completely pissing off into the distance. He has been incredibly fast thus far this season, and will probably continue that trend between now and the end of the season at VIR in a couple of weeks' time. Gonna move on to Spec 2 now, where it's not like Spec 1. It is monumentally close between Boris Essman, the German, and in the 213 car, my apologies, leading it at the moment, 379 points on the board, only 3 back to find Jeff Wubker in the 309 car. And there you go, Guido, there you are in P3, so swapping out the steering wheel for a spot in the broadcast truck throughout the rest of the season. Gotta say, welcome in, man. Always nice to have some new producing help, so Josh can finally have a rest. I don't know how much Red Bull that man's been drinking to maintain the schedule he's had, because holy cow. Speaking of holy cow, Jorg Mani, I mean, Randall, you've been calling him the janitor all throughout the season, because he has been cleaning up.
Absolutely. He's got every win in the Masters division except for the race at Donington Park, where I believe he finished 2nd after suffering a lap 1, turn 1 incident and working his way back up through the field. Get the mop bucket out today again, Jorg. It's another wet one.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to use up that mop here to clean off a lot of the stuff that you're going to see around this racetrack. Not just rain. I saw some gravel getting popped up onto the track earlier on, and right now we've got the driver still in this qualifying session littering this track right now with Richard Harwood, the driver of the 777 car, actually, I will address this. I'm not entirely sure if he is Spec 1 or Spec 2. Certainly showing the speed of a Spec 1 driver with the number of a Spec 2 driver. So we don't have a whole lot of time left to go in this qualifying session. But Harwood looking fast. Jorg Mani currently on your front row as it stands at the moment. Your provisional pole sitter in the Masters class. But Randall, let's do an onboard lap with Jim Brewster.
Yeah, we see coming through turn 1 there, there's a big puddle there on the apex. So you're going to see a lot of use of what's called the karting line, where you take a mid-entry, mid-apex, and mid-exit. You just want to kind of stay away from those curbs. They can be really dangerous when they're wet, especially when you see those puddles. He's going to straighten out the Moss S as much as possible, and a big run down to Atwood curve. This is one of the most important corners on the track, because not only is it a big passing opportunity, but it sets you up for the longest straightaway on the track. So it's absolutely crucial you get back to the throttle as early as possible to maximize your speed down the straightaway. And you're going to keep the car to the left. There's a bit of a kink ahead. You want to be lined up so that you come out all the way over to the left. You want to stay away from the white line when it's wet. Brake at about the 75 mark, which is between that 150 boards. And you see he's taking that midline through the entire corner, just searching for the grip. Gonna set up for this quick double left-hander. It's very, very tricky through here, even in dry conditions. So doing it in the wet, and having to stay away from those curbs really narrows up the track. Then a short shoot down to red man corner and another tight left-hand corner. They're gonna have to get absolutely right. This is gonna set up into a tight right-hander of Hobbs, and you just see the puddles forming everywhere on these apexes. So they're giving a nice wide berth. They're gonna have a high-speed right-hander. Actually, he's gonna dip into the pit lane here to finish this lap, so we won't see the last two corners at speed. But this pit lane, even if the track starts to dry out, watch for when these cars come into pit lane, because there will not be much traffic there, and it could still be very, very wet and very, very slippery.
It's going to be like setting up a slip and slide in the hallway of a hotel. That is exactly the way that pit lane is going to be feeling for these drivers, because as you just said, Randall, it's still going to be wet there, regardless of if the sun just gets a couple of billion miles closer to planet Earth and boils this track alive. It's still going to be slightly damp down there based off the fact that nobody is going to be going through their lap after lap after lap after lap. I mean, some driver may do, but I don't think that's a preferred strategy at all to do well in this race. So that's going to be real tough for these drivers when they come down pit lane. It's not an if, it's a when. These drivers have to come into the pits here in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, and we will be seeing that play a huge role in this 40-minute long race that we have coming up. But in this 20-minute long qualifying session, the checkered flag is out, and Jörg Mani has regained the provisional pole position at a 143.547. Juan Garcia currently joining him on the front row as it stands at the moment. Richard Harwood dropping down to fourth, with Michael McConnell slotted in third as it stands currently. Your current provisional pole sitter in the Spec 2 category stands to be Paul Jackson, as Jason Green jumps up to sixth right in the dying breath of this qualifying session. These drivers, as it stands, they are on their last lap, so they need to get the job done at the best time they can. One driver I'm waiting to cross the line in a couple of moments' time is the aforementioned busiest producer in the world, Mr. Joshua Wilkie. He's currently going on to that start-finish straightaway now. Let's see if it is an improvement from the sleep-deprived man in the 23 car. It is not.
And lots of track evolution here. Since it stopped raining, you're going to start seeing cars get faster and faster, which is exactly what happened with the likes of Harwood, Manny, Garcia, and McConnell. They got their fastest laps in right at the end of the session. So the track already starting to dry out a little bit, even though there's not a really visible dry line. Expect more evolution in the race, as never mind, here comes the rain again, possibly.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I was taking a look at the iRacing weather forecast, and bearing in mind, folks, iRacing being the true simulation platform that it is, the iRacing weather forecast usually just as inaccurate as they are in real life, but the rain is back. The iRacing marking the track is moderately wet, so even wetter than it was in qualifying. But here we go. Let's take a look at the starting grid. Jörg Mani will start this race from the pole position. Juan Garcia join him on the front row. Michael McConnell going to be starting this race in the Furball Racing number 62 car in third. Richard Harwood, the Brit, going to join him on the second row. Daniel Tufts, another Brit, in P5. Jason Green, the American, in sixth. Soren Garrett, the Belgian man, in the KGL Sim Racing number 21 car, will start this race in seventh, alongside Antonio Reese, the second of the Masters drivers, in P8 overall. Tortolo got to start this race in ninth, with Alan DeGassis running at your top 10.
11th place, Kevin Adrian starting next to your Spec 2 pole sitter, Paul Jackson. 13th, Ethan Orr, along with Andrew Love next to him. Boris Esman in 15th, with Jim Brewster, whom we went with on board, in 16th. Bill Walker is going to start 17th. Jeff Whipkerd, P2 in the Spec 2 points battle, starting in 18th. Former producer for this very broadcast, Joshua Wilkie, going to start on the 10th row in 19th, when next to him will be John Toms out of Canada.
And looking through the final few starters that we've got in this grid, we've got Sander Verbruge, the Dutch driver, starting this race in 21st. Glenn Wolowski in 22nd. Peter True starting this race in 23rd. Daniel Salmon, a last-minute addition to this race, who joined a matter of a couple of moments ago, be starting in 24th. And from Scott Russell in P25, Stevie Ray from SMB and Ray Esports himself in 26th, with Chris Walker running at the 27 car, set to take the green flag in a couple of moments time. A green flag which is going to be absolutely soaked with rain. Looking at the weather forecast throughout the rest of this race, Randall, I think we're going to have rain from the drop the green flag all the way to the fall of the checkered, and with low track temperatures of 62 degrees as well, this is going to be treacherous.
Absolutely. We saw one driver there hanging off the very back of the field, was actually sideways coming out of the hairpin, so they're struggling even on this at this low speed define grip. These first couple laps are going to be extra sloppy, just the way you kids like them. So keep your eyes open. There's going to be lots of action here as they try to get these tires up to temperature.
Oh boy, not touching that one. Ready to get things up and rolling from the 8th race of this season. We've got a Masters driver starting on the overall pole, so who knows what sort of chicanery we're going to be seeing in this race at Okayama here today. We got rain in the forecast, rain coming down, and rain on the track. The green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way. Monty gunning it early, heading down that start-finish straightaway into turn number 1, as most of the field try and go side by side, maybe even 3 and 4 wide, a little bit farther in the back in the mist. These drivers have to be oh so careful. One driver not, that's tough, sideways heading through turn number 1. That's not good. Oh, he got cleaned out by Boris Aspen, and the 213 car just saw that collision. That was a crash for sure. 24 cars still out there on track with multiple drivers not taking a start of this rain-soaked matter here at Okayama. Some veterans here in the Weekend Warriors world may remember about a year ago at this point when the V runoffs, I believe the 40th V runoffs here in the Weekend Warriors world, were held at this very track in the rain. The first ever Weekend Warriors Formula Ford race in the rain was held at this very track, but just because it does have that little connotation to it doesn't mean it's got to be easy for these drivers, as we've seen thus far on the first lap.
Yeah, the only one that's feeling that it's any sort of ease right now is Jörg Manning, because he has none of that spray clogging up his vision. As you saw them coming down the straightaway, you can see how bad the spray was, and all these drivers are going to have to deal with that, except for whoever's in front. Right now, that's Jörg Manning. He's got a nice gap of about 3.5 tenths over Juan Garcia, but that's not a huge breakaway. We don't see really any big gaps forming in the field yet. But you expect to see some of those form after about 4 or 5 laps.
And let's see how this race is going to develop, whether it's going to age like milk or if it's going to age like a really high-quality cut of beef. So let's see how things are going to shake out in this race. 24 cars still out there on the track as it stands at the moment. Coming around the final corner is Jörg Manning to complete the first lap of this race. He leads it over Juan Garcia in P2. Michael McConnell slot in third. Harwood and Green completing your top 5. And as they head through this start-finish straightaway, mostly single file, some side-by-side racing, a little bit farther behind involving Jason Green. I believe he's got a battle on his hands with himself and Tortullo, so that's going to be a real spicy affair, Randall. Those two crashed in the Formula V race yesterday, so as much as it was an apology fest between those two, I have a feeling that they may be a little bit tense when it comes to going side by side with each other.
And we have a replay coming up of the start in the incident here in turn 1 with Daniel Tufts. You're going to see him there on the inside behind Michael McConnell, looking to the inside, looking to be opportunistic. The start is the best time to make position, so he really sends it down into turn 1 and comes together there with, is that the 777 car, I believe? Possibly, yes. Richard Harwood there on the outside, some very minor contact. 2 cars just trying to make it through turn 1. It's going to send him around and then ultimately gets collected by another car. It looks like no heavy damage to either car, so it was a very light impact, and they're both able to get on the way. But as we rejoin live pictures, Daniel Tufts got a lot of ground makeup.
Yes, that's going to be a big setback for him right at the drop of the green flag. We got a whole lot of time left to go in this race, but I believe he's already coming to the pits as well, considering he's 42 seconds back. So that is just about game, set, match. Even with the rain conditions, I have a feeling he can't make it all the way to the checkered flag unless he is fueling his car with magic side by side. Nearly coming to blows between Jason Green and Richard Harwood. Tortullo going to try and pick up the pieces side by side between those two, heading through the second to last corner of turn number 10. That's Mike Knight corner. Rather interesting fact about Okayama. When this track was first constructed, it was built as kind of like a motorsports resort. So a lot of the tracks around here are named after British racing drivers who gave some of the first lap guides around this circuit when it opened all the way back in the 90s. So a nice little fun fact for you. Despite the fact we're finally out of the UK this season, we're running at a track which is about as British as a Japanese racing circuit could get.
Absolutely. We saw there Richard Harwood looking to the inside of Michael McConnell. McConnell closing the door on exit. Those cars are very close together, so they're not giving much room for error in these wet conditions. Still racing very hard early doors in this race. We see them getting too wide back behind this pair into the hairpin, so everybody still trying to get position, trying not to let the leaders break away too much. But right now, Jörg Manny and Juan Garcia have a pretty nice gap formed, and Juan Garcia still just trying to hold on desperately to Jörg Manny. We saw that gap get up to about 3/4 of a second, and now they're racing for third place. Here comes Harwood on the inside of McConnell. Is he going to get it done here? It's like McConnell's going to have the run off the corner exit, going to be able to retain that position. Momentum, a huge part of not only this car, but also this track. Add in the wet conditions, and it's tough to get moves done.
The thing is as well, when it comes to this Formula Ford, it's an old school race car, so you are hanging the ass end out of these cars coming through every single corner, doubly so in the rain. But these drivers still going to give us some good side-by-side action. To talk about this, Michael McConnell going side-by-side with Richard Harwood, finally gets that move done to slip his way up into third. Tullo, meanwhile, trying to make up some ground in the number 27 car. He's had a very good start as it stands at the moment, up 4 spots from where he started in this race. He's not the hard charger, though. It's actually a tie for the hard charger, as Antonio Reese making that early call to come into pit lane in that 914 car. Antonio occasionally decides to buck the trend and come in well earlier than everybody else, but this is supremely early for Reese.
Absolutely. This is about as early as you could possibly get in, so he might have to do some fuel management through the rest of this race, but it's going to give him a nice clean track. He's not going to have to deal with any of that spray. He will lose slipstream, which is extremely important at this track and in these cars. And here we have a car that maybe struggled to keep it on the island right now. We're going to take a look at Daniel Salmon as he's coming into the hairpin. He's going to have to get on the brakes pretty hard here to keep it out of the rear of the driver ahead. Looks like maybe just missed his braking mark, runs a little bit wide there at the hairpin, brings it back on track with a bunch of gravel there across the racing line. No harm, no foul. He just lost a bunch of time. And I hear he's not the only one. Is Woloski also having problems here, keeping the car on track? He's going to run wide in through Mike Knight corner. Yes, going to get there up there in the gravel, bring a bunch of that stuff onto the track for everybody behind him. It's going to act like a banana peel in Mario Kart for some of these drivers. So a few more drivers go through there, it will clear off.
Sharing is caring, I guess, and that could be part of the reason why Woloski was happy to bring some of that gravel back onto the track, and that's the run-up into the final corner as well, so that's going to be tough. Here's Peter True going off the track into turn 1, and let's see the gravel get spread across the track as he rejoins it. There you go. That's not what you want to see at all if you're a driver right behind that stream of gravel going onto the circuit. Won't be the first time that we see that happen. This race certainly will not be the last either, as Jason Green going to come into the pits in the 160 car. So as much as we were saying that Antonio Reese in that early call to pit was a little bit surprising, looks like Jason Green thinks that's a smart call to do in this race.
I think what we're seeing is a reactive strategy here. Michael McConnell is currently in third place, but he's a bit of a cork in the bottle right now. I'm not saying that he's slow. He just doesn't seem to have as much pace as some of the drivers behind him. However, they're finding it very, very difficult to pass him. So it's one thing to catch another driver. It's a completely separate thing to pass him. And while they're trying to deal with this and trying to get around McConnell, Juan Garcia and Jörg Manny are driving off in the distance. That gap ahead is nearly 4 seconds. And I hear we have another incident on track. And who is this? Ethan Orr coming through the first corner. Oh, sorry, the hairpin coming off of, yeah, that's the first corner, and then through Williams, and carries a little bit too much speed there. Parks it sideways on the racing line because we have to wait for the rest of the traffic to go by before he gets going again. Whoa, near miss by Jason Green coming out of the pits. And there's a lot of traffic for him to wait for. He's going to try to get going again, and that's going to get him back underway. Woloski also really struggling out here. We saw him go off track earlier. We'll see what happens as he makes his way through the Moss S down to the hairpin and just going to loop it around. It is so wet out there. Got a little bit close to that curb, probably some rubber buildup down there, which gets extra slick in the rain.
Yeah, these drivers and these race cars The drivers are doing an impression of a captain, and the cars are doing an impression of a cruise ship. That's really how they're driving around this circuit. It is not good at all. You think, okay, yeah, they're race cars. They're going to have a lot of grip. Lots of these cars are skiing around like a dog on a freshly polished wood floor, and hey, we're not even
I hate to put in here, but
into this race.
I hate to put in here, but Juan Garcia has dropped back to 4th place, so Tortullo has made his way around Michael McConnell, but Juan Garcia must have had an incident because he went from 2nd place down to 4th place, and that gap ahead of Tortullo to Jörg Manny is in 1st place, as we now see Garcia go off one more time. So he is definitely having troubles coming to grips with this car right now. We're not exactly sure what initiated all of this falling down the grid, but he was comfortably in 2nd place without much pressure from behind, and now he is all the way down to, it looks like, 7th place.
Yeah, I think Juan Garcia definitely had some sort of off-track excursion, and there you could see it. It was heading through Atwood curve of turn number 4. You could see him rejoin the track right as McConnell and Tullo came within striking distance. And here we go. There's a side-by-side fight as well with Tullo and McConnell hang down the back straightaway into the hairpin at turn number 5. And Tullo getting that move done in rather commanding fashion. Garcia trying to get some pieces picked up as he tried to go for it on McConnell. You could see Soren Garrett's go off the track a little bit farther in the back, a shot as well. So that's what happened to Garcia, and you're exactly right there, Randall. And just based off his lap time last time by, I think he was in the 152s compared to some of the drivers around him in the 148. So definitely Garcia having a torrid time of things as of late in the number 32 car. He was running decent in this race. I mean, 7th still ain't too bad, but compared to where he was before, that's certainly a kick in the shins if ever you see one, as we're back to live action and we see Jörg Manny at the front of the field completely checked out. You know, Randall, thus far this Weekend Warriors season, we saw a couple of weeks ago in the Formula V's a Spec 2 driver grab a checkered flag overall as an overall winner. Here in the Formula Fords, though, we haven't seen that yet. Keyword being yet. I don't want to jinx it, but this is looking pretty all right.
Yeah, just because Jörg's a Masters Division driver, the requirements for that is that I believe it's that you're 60 years old or older. So just because he's a Masters driver, just because he's old, doesn't mean he's slow. As he's showing off here today, that gap is up to 6 seconds. So the janitor mopping it up today. His biggest challenge right now is going to be keeping focused and not making a silly mistake that turns into more mistakes, because it's very easy to get complacent with that big of a lead. And here we're having more drivers having issues with track limits. Juan Garcia, he's really trying to make up some of those spots that he lost and having contact with the car ahead that's going to send him off at turn 1. He really needs to have somebody in his ear right now telling him to calm down and just click off some laps. He's let one mistake turn into many mistakes, and it's having a hugely negative impact on his race. He just needs to calm down for a couple laps, find his rhythm again, and then the spots will come if he's fast enough.
That is a fantastic point to raise there, Randall, talking about being in a good frame of mind if you are one of these drivers, because as we saw from Garcia, he let one mistake happen and that snowballs into many. But Antonio Reis has had a very bad mistake, and that's taken him out of the race. The driver who's one of the first to come into the pits on a strategy call instead of repairing some damage, he's out of it here at Okayama. So what in the world happened to the driver of the 914 car? We're going to take a look at a replay to see what happened in the race. You can see him involved in an absolute hornet's nest of race cars. I think Garcia, Salmon, and Wolowski involved in this. Wolowski spins and oh my God, upside down goes Antonio Reis. He's turtled, and that will take him out of it.
And Antonio Reis was the closest thing we had to a challenger for Jörg Manny in the Masters Division Championship. That's going to have basically write the season off. Jörg Manny's in a very, very prime position to win this championship, even if he doesn't show up for the rest of the races. So Jörg Manny gonna be almost counting his chickens by this point in the season after Antonio Reis takes that wild ride into the gravel pit and does his best impersonation of a turtle. Gonna be kicking himself for that early pit stop, put him in some of that slower traffic that caused that issue. Nowhere really for him to go. When I watched that on replay, it was just kind of wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, that was the true definition of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, Wolowski He's had this race as well. Wolowski, I gotta wonder how badly that car was handling. It was driving around like a trash bag full of mango pulp based off the amount of incidents we've seen him thus far involved in this race. So the driver of the 207 car clearly having some handling woes and not enjoying these rain-soaked conditions at Okayama. And unfortunately, Antonio Reese just with absolutely nowhere to go. That takes him at only 7 laps in to this race. We only have 14 minutes on the clock. We've seen a lot of stuff befall these drivers already. 14 minutes in of this 40-minute long race, and we're starting to see some drivers form their own little huddles, to invoke a little bit of football terminology here on Super Bowl Sunday. But Michael McConnell right now, kind of the Pied Piper of this small little train between himself, Richard Harwood, and Kevin Adrian a little bit farther behind. So let's take a look at a replay to see a moment involving Sandro Verbruge a little bit farther in the back in the 233 car. Let's see him heading down the back straightaway into turn number 5 in a couple of moments' time. There's a corner where we've seen some drivers have off-track excursions on already and just overcooks it a little bit. Ends up in a small little bit of gravel on the outside, but doesn't actually end up leaving the circuit. But still, for Bruges, having that moment cost him a little bit of time and 1 spot as well. But getting back to the point I was going to raise, Randall, McConnell still running in the podium spots despite everything going on. However, I have a feeling that Harwood and Adrian right behind are maybe a little bit antsy to get a move done.
Yeah, I saw Kevin Adrian there showing the nose of Harwood. Tortullo's the only one that's been able to get a move done around McConnell. So while these drivers behind might be faster, they still have to get the pass, the overtake completed, and they haven't been able to. They've been trying repeatedly through this race. McConnell being a very, very staunch defender here and not letting the move happen. Tortullo, again, the only one that's gotten the best of him so far. We'll see if these other drivers are maybe overdriving the tires a little bit, if McConnell's maybe keeping just a little bit in reserve for the end of the race. Right now, the Furball Racing driver looking really good here in 3rd place.
Yeah, he's just positioning that car exactly where he needs to, and that's causing him to remain in P3. Jörg Mani, though, having a very expertly crafted drive now, extending that gap to himself and Tortullo to about 7 seconds as it stands at the end of this 9th lap. So Jörg Mani putting on a really good drive, and as you raised a couple of moments ago, Randall, when we saw that moment with Antonio Reese flipping through the gravel trap in turn 1, I mean, he already nearly had double the points of Antonio Reese, so it was probably set in stone as is. But if Jörg Mani can hold on to this spot, he would honestly have a good shot of maybe even winning the championship overall. Because one thing we haven't mentioned thus far, Ian Joyner not here at Okayama. So that's going to be very good for Antonio Reese. A reminder to any folks who hasn't tuned into the series before, these drivers, as much as they are classed in their own 3 respective classes, they are awarded points based off their overall finishing position in all the 12 races that we have from this season. And Jörg Mani, he's shown up to every single one of them. He's contended for some overall wins in the past. Jörg Mani may actually have a really good shot of being the highest points gainer and the highest points awarder of any driver throughout the season. And to do that as a Masters man would be brilliant.
Yeah, he's definitely found something different this season. I've seen him struggle across multiple Weekend Warriors leagues the previous few seasons where he's just had some bad luck, maybe put himself in a couple bad positions, but all around he just seems to have had rotten luck. It seems to be coming up everything his way. This season, though, the janitor really flexing his muscles here in the Formula Fords. This season, 6 wins out of 7 races so far, looking to make it 7. His only not win, 2nd place in the Masters division, and it was like 5th or 6th overall. So amazing stuff out of Jörg Mani. We've kind of come to expect it, but to see him put together a season like this is pretty magical.
I gotta say one thing as well, talking about the small little rump that Jörg Mani found himself in throughout a decent chunk of 2024. It really started for season 2 of 2024, which strangely enough was the season where I started commentating Weekend Warriors full time. So I guess maybe there's some sort of commentator jinx. I guess some clapback falls back on me, but I'm still on these shows, and Jörg Mani has been able to shake off that commentator jinx like a bad case of the fleas, as he has just been just flawless all throughout the season, and all three of the weekend warriors as well. In the Formula Vs, he's been very, very fast. I kind of joked during the Formula V broadcast yesterday the fact that Jorg was slacking a little bit in that championship because he only had won 4 of the 7 races leading up into yesterday, where he took another Masters win. So you can actually, no, he didn't take a Masters win. It was Alan DeGassis who won in the other Masters category in the Formula V race yesterday. But I was joking how Jorg Mani had been a little bit spotty in that series because he only had won half the races. In the Spec Racer Fords, he's been brilliant there as well. But in the Formula Fords, he has just been in a class all on his own. I think it's part of the reason. I think part of the reason why that is the case is just the driving style that Jorg Mani has. You know, Randall, we got a chance to talk to Jorg Mani quite a lot, and he always mentions that he doesn't give a damn about anything. He will always push that car to the absolute extreme. And in this old school Formula Ford, I think his driving style is part of the reason why he's so indomitable in these cars.
Speaking of driving style, we're watching some of these drivers come through the hairpin, and they're taking a wildly different line compared to Jorg Mani. Jorg was in the absolute center of the track on entry, where all these other drivers seem to be opening it up. And normally in dry conditions, that's what you would want to do. You open up that entry. But they're out there on the rubbered in part of the track, if there's any rubber left in this track after all this rain. And that's where it's going to be the slickest. So him taking that nice mid-entry and then letting it coast through the apex and then getting back to the throttle once he comes back to the middle of the track is what's allowing him to have this much pace. Other drivers not taking that tactic are a little bit slower, probably in that hairpin in particular. So just watch the difference in the driving line, see where he's attacking right there in the middle. You even see a bit of a dry spot forming on the outside line, but he's in the middle of that track through most of the corner, and he's off the throttle where he gets closest to the apex where he crosses the racing line.
I will say one thing as well, talking about dry spots maybe potentially forming around this track. The track temperature is staying about the same. They're still at about 62 degrees Fahrenheit, 65 Fahrenheit is the track temperature itself with actually, no, I've got that butt backwards. It's 65 ambient and 62 is a track temperature. So really, really cold for these drivers at side-by-side racing with McConnell and Kevin Adrian heading through turn number 5. Not close enough in Adrian's case to get that move done to slip his way up into the final podium spots, but Kevin Adrian starting to feel a bit racy.
Adrian was able to get around Harwood and is now taking his shot at McConnell. We see him doing a bit of a different tactic, and it almost worked out for him. Took the outside line through the hairpin, tried to get a good run off the corner. It nearly worked out for him. It would have set him up for the inside of the following 2 corners and given him a really good shot to get the move done. McConnell able to get back to the throttle quickly enough, though, to get that door shut before they got to that left-hander. So Adrian trying a little something new that we haven't seen other drivers try against McConnell, and he might try it again this lap. It might work out for him.
Yeah, I gotta wonder what these drivers are going to do in terms of getting past each other, whether they will use the call to come into the pits as a small little pawn in their back pocket to try and pull off the best strategy that they can. Some drivers still putting in some very good lap times. Jorg Mani just set the fastest lap of the race last time by, as these drivers are continually improving their lap times. The rain is still coming down as it stands at the moment. However, according to iRacing, the track is it's about as wet as it was at the start, which is certainly not ideal. But one thing that these drivers are probably going to be happy about is the fact the rain is probably going to stop in the next 10-ish minutes in sim. So that rain still coming down, probably going to stop in the not-too-distant future as Daniel Salmon making that call to come into the pits a little bit farther in the back. He's joined by Jeff Wubker in the 309 car as these drivers up towards the front have yet to make that call to come into the pits. With all the drama that we saw involving Antonio Reese, Alan DeGassis currently holding on to P2 in the Masters category, which, considering Jorg Mani has just completely checked that into the distance, it'll feel like a win in his case, and he's actually got a class battle going on right now between himself and the Spec 2 leader of Bill Walker side by side into turn number 5. It looks like the gas is going to get that move done to remain in P7, but Walker still going to be fighting in the 319.
Absolutely. And if the rain does stop here in about 5 to 10 minutes, we won't have enough time to really see the track dry out, but we will have enough time that in the closing stages, contact there with Sander Vanderbroek, and is that Jason Green. A little bit of contact there. Juan Garcia going to make his way through too as well. Jason Green having a little bit of an incident there. His car looks okay. Doesn't seem like any of the suspension components are bent on that car. It did cost him a little bit of time, but he's going to be counting his lucky stars that he wasn't taken out of this race. We see Alan DeGasis coming into pit lane, and somebody else behind him is that Josh Wilkie coming into the pit lane as well. So we're starting to see some traffic on the pits, but like I said, this track might start to dry out a little bit, enough that towards the end, at the very last lap, we might see some drivers take some adventurous lines looking for grip and maybe pull off some brilliant overtakes.
These drivers got to start to explore this track and see where they can find the grip. Just to wrap the bow around the storyline, that was DeGasis and Wilkie coming into the pits. DeGasis, the Masters American in the 904 car, topping up with fuel. Wilkie, the Canadian Spec 1 driver, topping up with maple syrups. Let's see how those two exit. Add some more drivers joining them down in the pits as well. That's John Toms coming into the pits in the 977 car. So let's see if that will spark the drivers up towards the front to make that call to come into the pits. The main driver I'm going to be keeping, as Richard Harwood, I think, just got abducted by you. Oh, no, he's back. Okay. I just saw him disappear. I was thinking, oh, God, we just had an alien abduction there for the driver of the 777. But no, he's still out there on the racetrack as it stands at the moment. You got the hamster running on the wheel that makes up Harwood's AirNet connection. Just had to take a quick little break for a sip of water there as side by side with McConnell and Adrian heading off into turn number 8. There we go. These drivers have been teasing us with a side-by-side fight over the past couple of laps, but now they're deciding to really go after it.
We'll see, maybe one of these drivers is going to react by entering the pits this lap. No, McConnell and Adrian both are going to stay out. If I'm in Harwood's chair, I'm watching this battle, and I'm dipping into the pit lane as quickly as possible to try to create some separation, come out, set some quality pace laps after that, try to overtake them in the pit lane. But however, they have all stayed out, and they're running nose to tail right now. Adrian looking left, now going to maybe look right. No, thinks better of it. McConnell going to make that Formula Ford as wide as possible going through turn 1 and the run up to Williams. There you go. Adrian showing the nose again coming into this corner. Not really a prime overtaking spot, but still keeping the pressure dial up on McConnell. We might see a lunge here into the hairpin.
And let's see, heading down into Atwood curve of turn number 4, is Adrian going to go for the dive? McConnell on the defensive line, but he's going to run a little bit wide, hang through the corner, hoping to get a good exit. I think he timed that rather well. However, Kevin Adrian focusing on good exit too. McConnell, that was not an ideal line regardless, heading through turn number 4. And let's see if it's going to cost him heading down the back straightaway into turn number 5 in a couple of moments' time. Will Adrian go for the move? He lifts out of it a little bit. That's going to allow Harwood to close up a little bit. Kevin Adrian not really risking it for the biscuit this time by, and I gotta wonder as to whether or not he's eyeing up a run down into the pits at the end of this lap. I would not be shocked at all if he decides to do that, because he did not decide to attack McConnell there at the end of the back straightaway, which is I can't say strange, but it certainly is surprising from my view, Randall.
Well, you mentioned that unorthodox line through Atwood corner, and that was actually a really, really good line for the conditions, considering how wet it is down there. It's at the bottom of the hill, so it's going to have the most water puddled up. He kind of diamonds off the corner, which is something you see in oval racing, as we see Harwood dip into the pit lane, taking my advice. Also behind him looks like Soren Garrett's going to come into the pit lane. But that allowed him not only to defend against the crossover move, but allowed him to get to the throttle very, very early. So he carried all that momentum down the straightaway. And we saw Kevin Adrian, even with the benefit of slipstream, wasn't really able to close the gap to the car ahead. So that extra time on throttle really paid dividends for McConnell.
And let's see if he does it this time by as well. Just trying to run a different line. Search for the grip where there really isn't any, but these drivers are probably feeling a lot more confident in the way their race cars are driving than they did feel 27 minutes ago at the drop of the green flag. Jurgmani certainly feeling confident now, extending that gap to himself and Tortola to 11.5 seconds. That is a brilliant gap to have if you are Jurgmani in the 925. And let's see if he can hold on to it between now and the checkered flag. Driving a Masters win and an overall win as a Masters driver. That'd be the first time anyone's done that in the Weekend Warriors world in a couple of seasons. So that will be a brilliant result for him. Tortolo, who is currently running in P2, there's definitely a comment to be made. Tolo, a driver who runs in some Formula V machinery and some other race cars, in the UK, briefly visited Japan not terribly long ago at a kart track in Fuji, so that's part of the reason why he's been a little bit absent from the Weekend Warriors world as of late. But the UK driver, who is originally from the northeast of the US, I believe, named after a family friend, I believe, who is from Scandinavia, kind of explains why he's very good at running in cold and wet conditions, and certainly proving that right now, finding himself in P2 in the lead of the Spec 1 category. In the Spec 2 class, though, we've got a heads-up fight between Paul Jackson and Andrew Love. Those two cars yet to come into the pits, as we got to take a look at a replay to see a moment involving Andrew Love. So that could be part of the reason why we've had a swap-a-roo in Spec 2.
Absolutely, there in that short shoot between the two left-handers after the hairpin, gets out there on that curbing a little bit too much, and you see the car just turns into Stewart and says, "Hey Andrew, look what I can do," and tries to spin on it. He does a really good job of catching that car and keeping it out of the barrier, gets it going back in the right direction, loses one spot overall. And I hear there's more problems on the track. We see Trenton Kramer here involved in a hefty fight coming down the straightaway as they approach their hairpin, and it looks like somebody probably just going to get it wrong. Oh no, yeah, gets it wrong indeed. Onto the grass, and just barely misses taking out the car ahead of him. So a big brown driving suit moment there for Trenton Kramer coming to the hairpin. Got to stay out of that grass.
Oh my God, you could tell that was terrifying based off the fact I sound like a tornado siren a couple of moments ago. Holy cow, that is absolutely terrifying for Trent Kramer, nearly coming in for Randall bowling into turn number 5. I mean, it has the word pin in the corner name, so I guess it does fit, I guess, maybe. Oh no. Kevin Adrian involved in a battle. Jim Brewster involved in a battle as well. We haven't really talked about Jim thus far in this race. He's got himself involved in a 3-car Hornet's nest with himself, Richard Harwood, and Juan Garcia. So the Masters driver currently running P2 of the Masters racers, battling hard with some Spec 1 drivers inside the top 10, as Jörg Motti going to come into the pits from the overall race lead, as the side-by-side racing does not flare up between Harwood and Brewster into turn number 4, although Brewster certainly looked at it. That was into turn number 5. My apologies there, folks. But still, Jörg Motti making that call to come into the pits. He's going to be joined in pit lane by Kevin Adrian. Tortolo and Michael McConnell going to stay out for an extra lap, so it will not be the sweep of laps for Jörg Motti, but he's certainly proving himself to be fast as Juan Garcia trying to get that moved on Jim Brewster.
Now, Jim Brewster here gumming up the works a little bit, has yet to come into the pit lane, so punching a little bit over his weight. It would seem right now on the leaderboard as we watch Jörg Motti rejoin in 3rd place. He'll quickly regather that lead once Michael McConnell and Tortillo come in for service. Kevin Adrian came into the pits. He's going to come back out in 4th place. Tortillo leading the way right now. And I'm looking at the timing screen, and I'm seeing kind of a bimodal distribution of pit times. We got times in the 9.5 to 10 second, and then the 12.5 to 13 second range. And right now, the only one that's jumping out to me as possibly being in trouble is Daniel Tufts right now with a 7.5 second stops time. So he might be earmarked for the Thompson Trophy for fuel management. Right now we see Soren Garrett was able to get in front of Richard Harwood on that pit stop. So he gained a spot just on pit lane itself, was 4/10 faster in pit lane than Richard Harwood. Or sorry, 3 seconds faster, not 4/10, 3 seconds faster than Richard Harwood in the pit lane. And look what it's done for him on track.
A quick question here, Randall. Was that a bimodal that you said a couple of moments ago in reference to the pit stop times? Was that my
bimodal
ears?
distribution? Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. I wasn't too sure. The last big word I learned like that was mayonnaise, so I will have to take your word for it as in terms of that. The pit stop times being the way that they are, I feel like if I tried saying that word, I would get my tongue wrapped around itself 14 bajillion times. As we see Alan DeGassis running in the 904 car just outside the top 12. He's got Sander Verbruge and Bill Walker running right behind Verbruge, and Walker running P2 and P3 of the Spec 2 drivers as it stands at the present moment. Bill Walker, we've seen a little bit of him, and when we last saw him, he was right close to Alan DeGassis. So Verbruge kind of breaking up that battle a teeny tiny bit, as it's now about 1.2, 1.3-ish seconds between DeGassis and Walker in P12 and P14. Andrew Love is your current leader in the Spec 2 category, Tortullo leading it in Spec 1 with Jörg Mani now running down in third, being your Masters leader. Still waiting for Tullo and McConnell to make that call to come into the pits, as the rain has stopped here, Randall, and the lap times are going down with it, with Juan Garcia last time by saying the 5th lap of the 1:45.1.
Yes, we're going to see lots of track evolution. It's going to happen pretty quickly with this many cars on track. It doesn't take a lot of change to make these cars go faster, so any bit of the track that starts to dry out is going to see lots of improvements, as we see Joshua Wilkie trying to track down John Toms right now. Both these drivers have already pit. Kevin Adrian now has Soren Garrett's all over his gearbox, so we'll see if Soren's able to get a move done. As this track evolves, though, you're going to start seeing grip appear in places maybe you wouldn't have expected before, so some moves that wouldn't have worked in the past might start working, and we see Soren Garrett's run that outside line through the hairpin, gonna give up about half the spot back, but then he's gonna have the momentum and get back to the throttle and be able to keep that spot away from Kevin Adrian. So Soren Garrett's on the move here in the closing stages. This could put him in a really prime position to be third place, possibly even looking to track down Tortullo once Tor comes into pit.
Yeah, and this is going to be really important for Garrett, as Michael McConnell has now made that call to come into the pits. Tullo going to stay out for yet another lap, but this is real interesting. I'm going to wait and see how McConnell shakes out on pit exit compared to the drivers that were around him in the likes of Soren Garrett and Kevin Adrian and Richard Harwood as well. Don't want to forget about Harwood in the 777 car. Dropped it back a little bit, though, so that may not be a driver we have to talk about in terms of that battle for P3. McConnell out and away. Let's see how he shakes out to Soren Garrett and Kevin Adrian around him. Garrett saying the 5th lap of the race at a 1:44.7, so we finally broken down the 1:45s. And what a time to do it if you are Soren Garrett. It's not going to be P3 for now. However, that gap to himself and McConnell is minuscule.
Absolutely. So Soren Garrett is going to be smelling blood and looking to get that move done as early as possible to try to get around McConnell and get his way down the road towards where Tortullo will eventually appear in front of them. Right now, we see Jörg Manny sitting second place overall. He is the effective race leader as we see the battle going on now. Here it is. Soren Garrett's Michael McConnell. Who's going to win this one? They're coming a nice long drag race. Soren Garrett's already set up for the outside line through the hairpin, which we've seen tends to be faster if you can get it right. He's going to have the move done before they even get there, so he's going to have a clean run from the middle of the track through the corner. As long as he doesn't overcook it there, he starts to slide on him. He's using the slip angle to his advantage, getting that rear end to step out just enough to be fast.
Yeah, just getting a little bit of slip angle going on there, not for style or brownie points, but just doing it to be quick, and he did that quite well. Tortullo making that call to come into pit lane. That's going to give the lead to Jörg Mani, who's about to head his way off into the final corner right about now, but I'm wondering how that's going to shake out for Tullo. Will that gap to himself and Mani diminish as a result, or is it going to be Mani still at the front of the field? Mani going to overtake him. Tullo still stopped in his pit stall, I wonder if he's going to fall back into the crutches of Soren Garrett's. No, it is not going to be. That was definitely a little bit of a far-off wish if you are Soren Garrett's, but there's Tullo out of pit lane finally after a wait of about 14 bajillion years. A little bit surprised that it was that long down in the pits based off the fact we have less than 4 minutes left to go on the clock. Tullo spending 10.65 seconds down in his pit stall and 33.37 down in pit lane, which is actually the same time that Jörg Mani spent in the pits, and even less time. Actually, it's less time for Garrett's running farther behind than Tullo spent. So a little bit surprising about Tullo's stop.
Yeah, we see Soren Garrett's is not terribly far away from Tortullo though, so not exactly an easy race left here for Tortullo. He's still got to keep the hammer down and keep that gap. Soren Garrett is absolutely on the move, though. Last time by, Jörg Manny did set the fastest lap time with a 1:44.375, which is about 0.4 faster than what it had been the lap previous from Soren Garrett. So we're seeing evolution here. Who's going to find the grip and who's going to find the speed? We see Daniel Tufts looking to the inside of Jason Green. He's going to get that move done on the run to the hairpin. Going to keep that nice tight entry, keep from the middle of the track and going to retain that position easily from Jason Green. So we're seeing some moves. We're seeing a lot of action here in the closing stages. Kevin Adrian taking a look to the inside there of Harwood, but nothing there. Harwood's going to retain that position for now, but watch these drivers start to explore, look for where the grip's at, and try to get some speed.
And let's see how these drivers are going to manage the end of this race. The rain has stopped, but this track is still soaked. The rooster tails going up in the air, flinging from the back of these race cars. iRacing still marking the track as moderately wet too, with the track temperature dipping down now to 61 degrees Fahrenheit. So even with the sun being out, this track is still rather cold. Daniel Tufts coming into the pits in the number 34 car from 7. That's going to caused him to drop down a little bit. Jason Green now getting moved on him to slip his way up into 7. Kevin Adrian setting the 5th lap of the race last time by to 1:43. So these lap times are absolutely falling down. So it is really putting the change in track conditions from the start to the finish of this race on full display, Randall.
Absolutely, and we're going to see drivers trying to find that grip, trying to find that speed. Soren Garrett was really on a tear for a few laps, and he's got that gap down to 1.3 seconds. So Tortullo not able to find the pace that Soren Garrett has been able to find. Ever since the pit cycle, Soren Garrett has really been on the move. I have to wonder where this pace was in the beginning of the race, but he is absolutely on the button right now, trying to close that gap. It's 2/10 in the run, 3/10 now from the hairpin, from Atwood corner down to the hairpin. So that's a lot of time in just one straightaway. He's going to be all over Tortullo here at the end of this race. Just 1 minute left on the clock. I think they might be taking the white flag this time by. So we are in for an absolute slobber knocker for second place.
And with that 1950s radio terminology out of the way, actually, I kid. That was a fantastic term, Randall. I may have to steal that myself. But only one more lap of racing action here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors at Okayama. Jorg Mani on track for a win. Tullo Slod to finish at P2. If he could just hold on and not drop down like a rock to these drivers that are running right behind him. This is a little bit farther back behind him, though, about 3 seconds to be a bit more precise. A 3-car battle with Michael McConnell, Richard Harwood, and Kevin Adrian. These drivers battling for the final spots inside the top 5. Every single point that you can get this season certainly matters in a series as competitive as this. And in terms of pace, they're practically evenly matched, and it goes backwards in terms of their pace. McConnell in 4th at the front of the train was the slowest. Harwood in the middle was the middle driver pace-wise, and look at that side-by-side racing with himself and Kevin Adrian, who's the quickest driver in that 3-car pack by far. Whoa. But look at that sideways, slideways, heading through Moss S. That was terrifying. If you're Kevin Adrian, he's going to need a change of underwear after that. I am convinced as he went side-by-side with Richard Harwood at the saw at the wheel, but he gets that move done to slip his way up into 5th, but with that slip-up, that may cause this race to fall into the hands of Michael McConnell. He's starting to pull away from these drivers as Soren Garrett and Tortullo side by side for the final 2 spots on the podium. Garrett tries to go for the move and drifts, heading through turn number 5. Not close enough in that number 21 car, but he's still within striking distance if Tullo has some sort of mistake in the dying breaths of this race. Meanwhile, farther behind, that gap between McConnell and Adrian has diminished, so we may end up seeing a side-by-side fight between these two in the final few corners of this race. Kevin Adrian certainly risking it for the biscuit in that number 10 car, but the front of the field, Jorg Mani, the Masters man in the 925 car, is going to be the master of the field here today. He wins it overall at Okayama. Tortullo going to have a fight with himself, and Soren Garrett's the line for the win, for the final podium spots on the win in Spec 1. Mani taking the fastest lap of the race on the last lap in the process. Holy cow, a dominant performance from Jorg. But right behind, it's going to be Michael McConnell finishing in 4th, Kevin Adrian rounding out your top 5, and Richard Harwood getting that move done to slip his way up into 6th. But if Kevin Adrian did have that slide in the early stages of that final lap, I think Michael McConnell would have been chopped liver.
Absolutely. No, Kevin Adrian was the only one to get a move done on that last lap, so he was able to find a little bit of pace, but it kind of put him out of the race with McConnell, so he's going to be kicking himself. Both he and Harwood are really going to be wondering what they did wrong here to not jump McConnell on the pit stop, because they both find themselves mired behind him like they were the entire first part of the race. So they're going to have to go back to the drawing boards on pit strategy. As we see is that Joshua Wilkie putting on a show for us, coming down the front straightaway to finish his race in front of Daniel Salmon and the last of the drivers coming across the line now. John Toms, Sander Vanderbruge, Jeff Wipker. Trenton Kramer's back there. He's a lap down. We saw him. He'll be coming around the last corner. Right now, there he is. He's a lap down. Saw him with some issues and trying to do a little bit of bowling for burgers there in turn 5 and not quite getting it right. And then I think it was Peter True is the last one still on track to finish this race.
As you can see,
the
these drivers
lining
up. Yeah. I don't have a good feeling about this. Yeah, sorry about that. I was in the midst of taking a sip of water as you pass it off to me, Randall. But yeah, here we go. Jorg Mani going to be leading them into the gravel trap at turn number 5, where we usually see this after a race at Okayama chicanery. He's got to be barreling in, going Mach 4. I have no idea what's going to happen here, but I have a feeling it's going to make me laugh and bang into the wall. And oh my God, that was a big crash. Holy cow. Jorg Mani lawn darts it and knocks both front wheels off his car. All I want for Christmas is my 2 front wheels, my 2 front wheels, my 2 front wheels. Oh, bang. Holy cow. This is, I'm waiting for, oh my God, I'm waiting for someone to ballpark it here, Randall. Oh, it may be Trent Kramer.
Almost had one get over the fence, not quite able to get the clearance. They probably have more luck in a car like the Spec Racer.
Is that upside down donuts I see?
That is upside down donuts.
What the hell? I have no idea. I have no idea what we're seeing right now. Oh, boy.
He likes to call that move the angry turtle. As he's on his shell and kicking around in circles.
I want to get back on my feet. I want to get back on my feet. Oh no, here we go. I want to see someone ballpark it. If anyone doesn't ballpark it, I'm going to be sorely disappointed. And I can't be driving through that small little gap in the barrier. I want someone to vault. Who knows? Maybe they can vault over the wall in turn 5 and then maybe end up landing it on the exit of turn number 9 on the other side of that little paddock road entry section thingamabobber there. Here we go.
Jason Green.
He may do it. He may end up doing it, Jason Gray. I have a good feeling.
No, I feel that he's probably out of fuel and is not able to make it, or else he'd already be down there, and he's just looking on in disappointment, wishing he could play with the other drivers.
It's so sad just riding on board with him. It's powerless in his wagon. It's just seeing this absolute chicanery go on a couple of 1,000 feet farther up the road. Oh. my thoughts exactly. All right, we're gonna move on to the results before we move off into the interviews, because I think we have some very happy drivers that are looking to have a chat with us before we wrap things up here today. So let's go through and document the dominating performance from Jorg Mani, the Masters man in the 925 car, going to be your overall winner here at Okayama, the first non-Spec 1 driver to grab a checkered flag as an overall winner here on the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors for Season 1 of 2025. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be the janitor. Tortolo going to finish in P2. Soren Garrett will run at your podium in 3rd. We have Michael McConnell finishing this race in 4th. Kevin Adrian finishing right behind in 5th. Richard Harwood going to complete a 3-car battle in 6th. Jason Green will finish in 7th. Alan DeGassis will end up in P8. Seeming like the top of the non-alien Masters drivers, because Jorg Mani was just in a league of his own today. Bill Walker going to win it in the Spec 2 category, finishing this race in 9th in the 319 car, with Juan Garcia running at your top 10.
11th place is going to see Andrew Love with Paul Jackson finishing behind him. Ethan Orr in 13th. Daniel Tufts, who had that incident, lap 1, turn 1, manages to drive it back up to 14th position. Joshua Wilkie going to be finishing in 15th place, right ahead of the Spec 2 entry of Daniel Salmon in 16th. Jim Brewster going to finish 17th with John Thompson 18th. Sander Vanderbruge, who we saw have a couple little incidents on track, comes home 19th in front of Jeff Wipker in 20th. And then rounding out the rest of your field, Peter True, Boris Eschman, Trenton Kramer, Antonio Reese, who we saw got taken out very early in the race. Glenn Wolowski was the last of the drivers to take to the grid of 25.
And looking through the final few drivers classified in this race, all of them did not take the start. So that will do it for the results here at Okayama today. We got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area, and one man who is certainly going to be crapping cotton candy after a performance like that is Jörg Mani, who's now joining us in the interview waiting area as not only the Masters winner, but the overall winner here at Okayama today. Jörg, welcome into the commentary booth, and congratulations on the overall win. Talk us through it.
They've got scoring all messed up here.
Oh,
And even in a wet race, I can't believe it. I don't know how that happened, actually. I just tried to not to touch any curbs or white lines, not to do any stupid mistakes. And I just drove my lap times. I had a lap time in my mind, and I tried to hit it all the time. I haven't seen my lap times yet, if they're consistent or not. But I think, yeah, it went well. Then Juan messed it up and went wide, and I think that from there on it was just, not doing any mistakes.
and not doing any sort of mistakes, and just driving as flawlessly as you possibly could from the start to the finish, and it worked out rather well for you. And I will say as well, once we're done with this interview, Jörg, you can take some of the cough drops that we've got here in the commentary booth, because that battle cry that you had coming in here, that sounded mildly painful, so I do not envy your vocal cords after that one. But I want to ask you about the challenges that you drivers faced throughout this race, and the changing conditions from the heavy rain at the start to the track slowly but surely drawing come time for the checkered.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wet race for me, as you know, is always actually not really a good race. Because I don't like it, mindset kind of. I'm not really on the track, but this time I tried to focus. I didn't speak that much on the Discord channel. Maybe that helped as well. But otherwise, it depends how you set up your graphics details. If you don't see the pedals, you don't know where they are. And it took me about 2/3 of the race till to find out on the hairpin. I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. Before the backstraight is coming, where the pedals are not there. And it took me about 2/3 of my time of the race to find that out. And then it was good. Otherwise, it was always like really challenging. How should I brake? Where should I brake? Should I brake early? And I mentioned on the starting lap, I will brake early. And lucky-wise, the other guys accepted that. And like this, it was okay. And yeah, just trying to survive.
Yeah, and you did survive, and not just that, you grabbed the victory as well, which is a pretty darn good way to keep this season rolling. It has been just about faultless for you here in the Formula Ford. So heading into the final few races, are you maybe gunning for a possible overall championship just based off the fact that you've been so consistent in the Masters class, and Ian Joyner did not show up today?
I'm trying, but as soon as Ian is on racing, it's gonna be tough. But my goal is still the same. I want to beat Ian once. I was once close. Maybe I have another chance. Let's see. I don't know what's gonna happen.
I would suggest maybe filling your car up with like some sort of energy drink, and then maybe some nitrous as well. At that point, you could just blow his metaphorical doors off come time for the next time he's running in this series. So, Jörg, if you want to take that advice, I'll give that for you for free. And I will say, if you do something like that, you may have to slip like a $50 bill into the pockets of the people in. At the tech shed, but you gotta do what you gotta do. It's racing.
I was actually on my mind to hire some 4 mafia guys to tell them, this time not racing that fast.
Hey, I mean, he didn't show up today, so I don't know. Maybe those mafia guys came back to try and, I don't know, do what they do in the mob movies and like whack him while he's eating a bowl of pasta or something like that. I don't really know what goes on in the life of Ian Joyner. Oh boy. Well, Jörg, I'll let you go and give any thanks or shouts out before we let you go and talk any more about different ways that the mob likes to whack people.
Pretty well welcome to Guido. I hope he has fun on his new job, and I wish him all the luck. And to all other drivers, it was a fun race today, and let's see what's happening in the Spec Forward now.
Yeah, the Spec Racer Forward race is going to be fun as well. But Jörg, thank you so much for joining us in the commentary booth, and congratulations on the overall win. Thank you for joining us, man.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
And that right there was Yorgamani, maybe with some connections with the Mafia, so I think I will try and stay on his good side from here on out. But Randall, who do you want to have a chat with?
It looks like I have gotten my hands on Mr. Tortullo, who has come home second place overall with the Spec 1 win. Tor, what was it like out there for you today?
Well, it was just trying to keep it on the black stuff and try not to send it off into the scenery, really. I knew I had a little more pace than what I showed in qualifying, so I just tried to keep my head in the game and pick off as many people as I could, but Jorg was just gone, just completely gone.
So we saw the conditions changing towards the end of the race, and you were one of the few that was able to get around Michael McConnell. Tell us what it was like trying to deal with those changing conditions once you had that clean track in front of you, and what it was like trying to work your way past Michael McConnell. He was very difficult to pass today.
Well, you know, Michael's a great driver, and especially in the wet, he's absolutely amazing. So I just kept trying to be in his mirrors and and try to kind of attack as many places I could, and finally broke him. And yeah, I was really lucky to get away.
So we see you here in the victory circle for the Spec 1 drivers. Can we see you again up here this season? Do you have any tracks on the upcoming schedule that really suit you that you're looking to get a win on?
To be honest with you, I have no clue what the calendar looks like for the rest of the season, but yeah, I'm hoping. I've got a few podiums this season, so I'm looking for that first overall. But there's so many quick drivers in this league, so I'm not really sure.
All right, well, congratulations on your win. And before we let you go celebrate, is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out?
I want to thank Jorg, since I feel like he's been giving me a lot of tow in qualifying lately, and he's really helping me with my results, so thank you, Jorg. And thank you to Brabham Motorsport, and to you guys at Slow Motion Broadcasting.
Well, we appreciate it. Congratulations once again on the Spec 1 win, and hopefully we get to talk to you again before the season's over.
Thank you so much.
That was Tortello, your Spec 1 winner, second place overall. And Ron, who have you tracked down?
I have dragged into the commentary booth for the second day in a row Jim Brewster. Jim, welcome back into the commentary booth, this time here for the Formula Fords. Hope you're enjoying some of the heat that we got in here to dry off after that race.
That was a lot of fun. You know, I really enjoy Okayama was one of my favorites, and I love the rain. I got a 0x, but I went very slow to do that. So, but it was a lot of fun. My buddy Andrew had a really good run. We started pretty close together, and he just worked his way up. And you know, once again with a rain race, you have fast people sometimes that go past you and then spin, and you pass them again, and then they pass you again, and they spin, and you pass them again. I had a couple of those. So, you know, it's an extra adventure.
And an adventurous day in the sim here at Okayama. Kind of flashbacks to about a year ago at this point with the V runoffs when it was held here at Okayama back in, I think it was the end of season 1 for 2024.
I think that was our very first rain race, and that was much more rain. That was super deep puddles everywhere and a lot of hydroplaning. Today was fairly quick. You saw those times. I don't know how the leaders do it. Those times were really coming down at the end. But yeah, there's obviously we have some half fish people out there, so you know, some special, as we know, we have special people out there.
There's definitely some special fish people out there. I've seen many scenes of people pretending that they were fish in the city of Philadelphia, possibly with some illicit substances involved in that behavior, and I will just leave it at that so I don't get my butt taken off the air. But Jim,
Okay.
yeah,
Hey,
I'll let you save me.
Hi to Tam, and I had a nice visit with Tor in the waiting room. You know, Tor was wearing his tux yesterday when he raced the V, and then he had an awards banquet for his real V, where he got a trophy. He said tonight that he got a 4th place for the season. But on top of all that, he rode his motorcycle back and forth in the tux to the awards banquet. So, you know, we have special people.
I gotta say, honestly, Tortello riding a tuxedo on a motorcycle going to an awards banquet for a real-life racing series that he did rather well in. Yeah, that is a perfect mental image.
And
I don't think I will ever be able to be that cool in my life.
And you know he was smiling. I mean, Tor's always smiling. Anyway, have a great day, guys. Hi, Tim. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for everything.
Alrighty, sounds good, man. Jim, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth. That right there was Jim Brewster, and that's all the time that we have for in terms of interviews. But Randall, it was a good one here at the Okayama circuit, but we're going to be running at a new one for the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, heading off to Germany for the Saxon Ring in 1 week's time. I don't own that track at the moment in this sim, but I'm gonna have to buy that and get a lot of experience, because going from a well-used track to a brand new one, that's gonna be rather different. So what are your thoughts heading into that race in 1 week's time?
Yeah, anytime you see a new track appear on a schedule, you know that it's a bit of a wild card. You don't know who the track's going to suit. You might see some surprise drivers finishing at the top of the leaderboard, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one for sure. It'll be an exciting race, undoubtedly, but I love seeing new tracks on the calendar.
And that is just going to be one of the other fantastic races that we've got coming up here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, the Saxon Ring, Knock Hill, Zolder, and VIR, going to bring this Season 1 2025 calendar to a close. But just because we got 4 races left to go here from the Formula Fords doesn't mean the action is stopping here at SMB anytime soon. In fact, coming up later on, we've got the action from the Spec Racer Fords. They're going to be running at Donington Park on the national layout, so thankfully we won't be using that god-awful final hairpin. Just going to be using a rather odd chicane with curb so high it could cause you to pop up into low Earth orbit. And a driver who did that in the Formula V's a couple of weeks ago, Adam Thompson, will be in the commentary booth for that. I have to get my butt over to a broadcast over on iRacing for the Make-A-Wish Driver Wishes charity event. I would usually not shout it out, but it is a charity race, so I figured I would be a bit of a dick if I didn't. But I will leave it at that and say, for this broadcast, that will just about do it. And so, for myself, Ron Maunz, Randall McGrew joining me in the commentary booth, and Guido Marzucchi making his production debut here at SMB, doing an absolutely brilliant job for his first show. I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you all for that Spec Racer Ford race later on this afternoon.